Hey friends, and welcome back. You've gone through the majority of medical school undergoing all of these different medical experiences. And now you've got your sights set on applying to the US for residency. Well, we're going to talk about how you can turn all those meaningful experiences into an excellent ERAS application. This is the perfect time to talk about them because on September 28th, all ERAS applications are going to be sent to programs for revision. So let's break down what makes up an ERAS application as well as how to write an excellent one. Your experiences can be organized under three main categories on your ERAS application. One is going to be your work experience, secondly, it's going to be your volunteering experience, and lastly, your research experience. There are other things such as accomplishments and hobbies section, but those are the three main categories that you really want to focus on. To give you a brief summary about each single one, work experience relates to duties that you had that are either clinical, especially those that you had in the US, such as US clinical electives, but also other things such as service residency in your home country. I wouldn't necessarily include electives in places other than the US because program directors and programs in general just don't seem to care about that. Another thing that you can add on to work experience are paid jobs, and if they relate to the medical field, that's a plus. For example, if you were a medical scribe or a USMLE tutor, or you had some clinical academic duties that were paid, you could list them under work experience. For volunteering experience, from the name, it's those activities that required volunteering. In other words, you're not really being paid. For example, you can choose experiences such as leading an awareness campaign, or for example, volunteering at a student-led initiative. Research experience, well, that relates to your research duties. Be wary that there is an entire different section for publications. Although it's better for most research experiences to lead to publications, you could still include research experiences that didn't lead to publications. For example, let's say you worked at a big institution in the US for let's say 3 to 6 months, and you were working in the lab, doing certain techniques with pipettes and so on, and unfortunately you couldn't get a publication out of it. That could still be a very meaningful experience, and it shows that you have interest in research, so you could definitely include it. With that framework in mind, let's talk about my tips for writing an excellent ERAS application. Similarly to the personal statement, starting early is going to be my #1 tip. Now, even if the ERAS application still didn't open, you can actually be one step ahead of the game by opening a Word document and trying to at least write the title and position of the experience as well as a brief description of the experience. This helps in two ways. One, you're able to save a lot of time, and two, on the ERAS application, it doesn't spell check. So on a Word document, you would at least be able to pick up certain errors in the beginning before you commit to those errors on the ERAS application. Tip #2 is to think from the perspective of those who are going to read your ERAS application. Are they going to say things like, for example, oh, this is really long, I really don't know what they're trying to say? Or are they going to say, I really understand what this experience is and why it was meaningful to you? Keeping the perspective of your reader always in your mind helps you write things a lot more clear to the reader. Moreover, it also helps you stay organized. Tip #3 is to stay concise and stay simple. Here's an example of one of the experiences that I personally filled out on my ERAS application. As you can see, I use a list and I don't begin sentences saying, I did this or I did that. I immediately start with the verb and keep it consistent using always a verb to start my sentence. This makes things very simple for the reader to follow. Also, instead of trying to over dramatize or over philosophize, instead try and stay brief, mention the facts, and if possible, mention some numbers. If you were working with a really big budget, mention it. If you were working for a lot of hours, mention them. If you were working with a big group, mention the number of people you were in charge of, for example, if you were the leader. Tip #4. Prioritize what you want to include. You don't have to include every single thing that you've experienced throughout medical school because some things are more significant than others. For example, saying that you were volunteering as a tutor for 2 to 3 years is much different than saying that you were the leader at an awareness campaign for 2 to 3 days. The first experience is a lot more significant. It had a larger overall benefit to your growth as an individual. So when it comes time to choose your own experiences, try and triage them in order to know which are more important than the others in order to not drown out or overcrowd your application. My last tip is twofold. Get some feedback and possibly pay an editor in order to get your ERAS application reviewed. You have gone through medical school, you have done all of this, and now you're at that final step where you really want to make sure everything is perfect for residency in the US in order to get that perfect program. And the last thing that you want to do is give off this impression that you're lazy or you don't pay enough attention to detail. Some last remarks: your ERAS application is going to define who you are to your program because it's going to show them the experiences that you had. It's a mark of your commitment and dedication, and gets to show not only the quantity of experiences that you had, but also the quality of them to your programs. Don't over-neglect other portions of your ERAS application. For example, if you've completed residency in another US, don't neglect to mention that. If you have certain hobbies, they can be excellent conversation starters in interviews. For example, I mentioned music, videography, and chess, and those always came up during interviews and they were wonderful conversation starters. As a last point before we close off this video, the first 5 people to fill the first link in the description will have their ERAS applications reviewed for free by me. If unfortunately you've already missed this, then you can reach out to me on Twitter for more information. Also, I've recently launched a Buy Me a Coffee page, which you'll see right here. And if you keep coming back to the page, you're going to notice certain services being offered, such as reviewing personal statements or ERAS applications. Moreover, this page also allows you to support me to keep my content free and provide me with the fuel for residency: coffee. With that, I really hope you found this video beneficial. If you did, please consider hitting that like button as well as subscribing so you never miss any of my future content. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. I hope you find this video at the perfect time. Not the script. Not the script. Please, not the script. Okay.